Okay, so we have about 32 people already. I think there'll be about another 50 odd who'll be joining in due course. Oh, wait, there's already 34 odd people now. Let me just try to begin with a small note on a recent achievement. Uh, EZSOLAR was fortunate to receive two awards in the last week. One was the Grow Gujarat Startup Awards of 2015, giving us the Startup of the Year, and also 50 most influential leaders in the solar industry. We are extremely thankful to you and all others in the solar industry who have pushed us forward to be able to achieve whatever little that we have been able to achieve so far. We hope to be doing continuous service to the industry so that we are able to make it as easy as possible for people to go solar, for system integrators to design and install power plants, and in general for the growth and betterment of the industry. So thanks a lot once again. Now coming to the topic of today's webinar, which is getting MNRE exemptions for rooftop solar power plants. A little bit about myself first. I'm Puneet Singh Jaggi, as you can read on the screen probably. I'm the director of Easy Solar. I have had an experience of more than 1 gigawatt of advisory for solar power plants, for rooftop, utility scale, everything else. Uh, you could reach me anytime that you want at puneetjaggi@easysolar.com or at my phone number 99802580. As far as any questions or any issues that you might have, I request you that there's a Citrix panel that you would see on the right of your screen. If there is anything that you would want to ask at any point of time, you should just type in a question over there, and we will take up all the questions at the end of the webinar. This is essentially because we have got a short half an hour webinar from 11 to 11:30, so then people can choose to stay on or leave as per their requirements, right? So just type in the question on the question panel on the right of your screen, and we'll take it all up at the end. Moving on. So the topic is the exemptions which are eligible for a rooftop solar power plant, and what is the process to go about the entire process, to go about the exemptions. Now, all the key MNRE notifications are available on the MNRE website. You go to the MNRE website, you go to the tab of JNNSM under missions. So you'll be able to see all the notifications that have been published by the MNRE under the National Solar Mission. Now, there's a tab of concessional customs duty and excise duty exemptions. So within that, you'll see all the notifications that the MNRE has published. For the ease of the audience, the link to that notifications page has also been given. Now, the notification which is of the most interest to us was passed on 28th of November last year, wherein the earlier the exemptions, the customs and excise exemptions were eligible only for utility scale, large scale power plants which were megawatt scale. But after this notification on 28th November, now these exemptions are eligible for even rooftop solar power plants, right? But as you would see, the definition that they have put for rooftop solar PV power plants is that they should not be connected to the grid. Now, this is a little constraining definition, but in practical, even if you apply for grid-connected rooftop solar power plants, the exemptions are given, right? So, first of all, just for the benefit of audience, although I understand most of you might already know about it, I'll just tell you what are customs exemptions and what are excise exemptions. Basically, what custom exemptions mean is that at any point of time, if any equipment is imported within the country to India, then there's a customs duty that is charged. Typically, on solar equipment, it can be as high as about 26%. The excise duty, on the other hand, is whenever anything is manufactured in India, there's an excise duty which is charged on the process of that manufacturing, right? So that's the excise duty, which is typically about 12 odd percent, 12.5%. So there's a potential saving of 12 to 26% if you are able to get these excise duty exemptions and customs exemptions on solar equipment. Another disclaimer over here, the solar modules fall in a category that you don't require any exemptions for them at any point of time. The moment you import or the moment you manufacture these modules, they come under a category that they are auto exempted. So you do not require any forms or anything else for such solar modules. A reason for that is that the solar modules can only be used for solar process or a solar plant, whereas if you are going to take an exemption over cables or structures which are going to be installed in a solar power plant, they might be used for other purposes as well. Anyway, so coming back, as I said, the wordings mention that the policy is applicable only to the off-grid power plants or the not connected to grid power plants, but practically even the solar rooftop power plants which are connected to the grid are eligible for these exemptions. There are two other constraining criteria of this policy. The one is that the project has to be a minimum capacity of 100 kilowatts. Now, a key aspect over here is that it might be individual or it can be bundled in nature as long as it belongs to the same project, right? So it can be a single roof or it can be a combination of multiple roofs in the same area. Either way, as long as it has the same project developer, and when you name the project, you are able to give all the names of all the individual bundled projects within that name. You would be able to take advantage till the time the minimum capacity of cumulative or individual project is at least 100 kilowatt, right? So that is one constraining capacity. The other constraint that was given out in the policy at least is that there are no customs exemptions which are available. The reason why no customs exemptions were available is because we have enough domestic manufacturing capacity. So all the demands for equipment within India can be met in India for solar power plants, at least on the rooftops. So that's why there was no customs exemption certificates under the rooftop policy. There are for utility scale, but they are none for rooftops. Now, but most of the people in the audience, particularly those who are system integrators, might already know that the inverters are mostly imported. Whether you talk about SMA or whether you talk about Delta or whether you talk about Zever Solar, Fronius, any of the key names which are there in the industry, most of the inverters are all imported. And even if you have got them locally available in India, they are not manufactured in India. They are stocked in India, right? So that's already customs duty paid inverters. Now, if you want to import these inverters, according to the existing notification at least, you won't be able to get the exemption certificate. However, for a recent project that we have been assisting, we have tried to get this certificate, and it might be possible because the form that you submit to MNRE is exactly the same as you give in a utility scale, large scale power plant, in which you have an option of application of a customs duty exemption as well. Whether or not you would be able to get it probably is a matter of time. Or if there are members in the audience who have an experience with this, we'll get to know that in the question answer session. Moving on, the last part is with respect to eligibility is on certain items which you cannot claim exemptions upon. This is essentially to prevent the misuse of these exemption certificates. So certain equipments are or certain works are excluded from the scope of these exemptions. Civil work, earthing material, lightning arresters, CCTVs, fencing, gates, and a couple of other miscellaneous items like rubber gloves, firefighting equipments, etc. Now they comprise all put together a very small, probably less than a percentage of less than 1% or 2% of the entire system cost. That said, they are not eligible for the excise exemptions according to the government notification, right? So this was till now we were all discussing about what are the various eligibility criteria to be able to get the exemptions. Now I'll switch over to what is the process of getting these exemptions as well. Now the process is a simple three-step process. The first step is online registration. This process typically takes 7 days from the time you register to the time you get approved. The second step is that of state nodal agency approval. Now, the state nodal agency approval is typically taking a time period of 3 to 10 days. And lastly, there is the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy approval, after which there are exemption certificates which can be signed and given. This process takes anywhere from 7 days to 30 days. So, on a most optimistic timeline, you might be able to get everything done in 20 days. On the most pessimistic timeline, probably you'll end up taking a little more than 1.5 months, right? So, coming to the first part of the process, the online registration. The process of online registration starts with the MNRE portal, and this is not the standard mnre.gov.in portal. This is a particular portal which has been specified on the MNRE website. You could also access this portal by clicking on this link, which is 164.100.194.45/CCM. What you get is something which is shown on your screen as well. So this is the application form or the login window of the application form for application of customs and excise duty exemption, right? So the moment you come on this page, after which you need to give in a couple of details. When you log in, you need to mention the name of the solar project CEO. First of all, you need to register, obviously. You need to be able to give your email ID. When you give your email ID, it has to be a unique email ID. You shouldn't have another email ID registered on MNRE website for the same process. So you take a unique ID, you get your registration process completed, after which the website asks from you these details as you can see on the screen. Number one, name of the solar project CEO. This has to be someone who has the signing authority on behalf of the company. If you are not nominating the CEO, you're nominating anybody else, then there's another affidavit that you need to put along with that, which authorizes the person, or a board resolution, which authorizes the person to sign documents for MNRE. You should also make sure that you should try to have this person available for as long a time as possible, because he needs to sign on many purchase orders, many exemption certificates, the bill of material, etc. So, which is a recurring activity. So, probably if you're a 10,000 crore organization and your CEO is a very busy man, he cannot make himself available every time for signing of these things. You should possibly nominate somebody else with a board resolution that supports his nomination. The next thing is the developer name, which is the name of the firm which is setting up the power plant. Please note that this is different from the name of the firm, which is the EPC contractor. The system integrator or the EPC contractor cannot claim this exemption. These exemptions are meant for the end owner of the power plant. So, if I am going to set up the power plant, if EZSOLAR is the system integrator and we are setting up the power plant for, say, Indian Oil, then the name of Indian Oil will come over here and not EZSOLAR. Then the address, the exact location where the plant is being set up, the mobile number of the CEO or the concerned person, the email ID of the CEO or the concerned person. Again, the CEO should be of the project company and not of the EPC contractor. Moving on. So once we have got that process done, then we start uploading the bill of material that we want the exemptions on. So bill of material for in common parlance is essentially the list of all the equipments that you would require to set up the power plant on which you want these exemptions. So you would see a window as you see on the screen right now, that the submission of total bill of material window, wherein you can select a group. There are four groups which are available. There is solar block, power evacuation, and measuring instruments. So, for example, your solar panels will fall under solar block. Your power block would possibly have things like your inverter or HT panel and things like that. Your power evacuation is going to be having your switchgear equipment. Measuring instruments are going to be having things like pyranometers or weather stations that you have, and so on. After selecting the group, you can select the item name. You can specify whatever equipment that is over here, module mounting structures or cables or whatever it is. Then you need to specify the quantity. Now, while specifying the quantity, there are certain ways in which you can do it. There are certain units which are allowed, which are seen on the screen. You can do it in liters, meters, numbers, square meters, tons, metric tons, or kgs, right? So probably, again, cables you have to do in meters, and structures possibly you'll do in metric tons or kgs. Then you also give the specification. Please note that while entering these specifications, you need to be very careful. The specifications, as are mentioned in the bill of material right now, need to be the same as the specifications which you finally put on the purchase order as well. In case these two things are different, then the order won't be get then the exemption certificate won't be approved. What I mean to say is that if you end up putting 1000 meters of DC 4 square mm cable, but you actually end up ordering a 6 square mm cable instead of that, you won't be able to get the customs exemptions or the excise exemptions on that. You need to be careful that the specification mentioned here is same as the specification mentioned on the purchase order. Then after that, you point out whether you want the customs exemption or the excise exemption, and accordingly it is registered. Once you submit the bill of material, you get a confirmation. Once you submit all of the items that you want the bill of material on, it is not necessarily that you submit it all at once. You can submit it over a couple of days if you want. But once you do it, once you do submit it, you get a screen like this on the screen, wherein the bill of material is under process, is what is shown, right? So basically, the bill of material gets accepted, but is not yet approved, right? So after, in fact, there's another screen before that that you get for approval. Meanwhile, once you do get approved, then you get a screen like this on this on when you log in on the website, which is that your bill of material is approved by MNRE. This is important because till the time the bill of material is not approved by MNRE, you cannot take a printout of that bill of material. So there are three sub stages within that, as I had mentioned from the beginning. First is that you submit the bill of material online. The second is that the MNRE takes some time to evaluate all of that bill of material. And the third is the bill of material gets approved, and you get a status like this as you see on screen. Now the problem with the second and the first part is that the moment you press that submit button of bill of material, after that you cannot make any changes. You need to be careful that the bill of material that you submit to the MNRE is correct right in the beginning. If you try to make changes later on, it is going to be an extremely painful process because the online portal won't allow you to make those changes, particularly if something is already approved by MNRE. And the offline application process is that of you trying to submit it at the reception of MNRE. It goes to the relevant person, and they need to manually make all the changes at the back end, which is extremely difficult a process to do, and it is often time consuming as well. So what I would suggest is that you be very careful, design the entire power plant, make sure that there is very little room or no room for error over there, so that you don't have to make any changes in the bill of material. Otherwise, oftentimes it's going to be better that you take the extra equipment which you have left out from the bill of material after paying the excise duty rather than to go through the entire process. Moving on again, so once the MNRE approves the bill of material, then this by the way, this entire process takes about 3 to 7 days. Then the next step is the state nodal agency approval. So once you get the approval from MNRE, you can take a printout of that bill of material. You need to get that signed by the chief executive officer, CEO of the company, the one whom you had mentioned in the beginning in the form. And you also need to get it signed by the certified chartered engineer. Now, MNRE publishes a list of certified chartered engineers. Some of them are already present in this webinar as well. So the certified chartered engineers also need to be having their stamp with their chartered engineer numbers mentioned, which they stamp on the certificate, so that if there's anything wrong in future, they could be tracked back as well. So you need to make 3 files of documents which you need to submit to the state nodal agency. Given on the screen is a list of all the items that you need to have in those 3 files. So you need to have a bill of material once it is approved by MNRE, obviously, signed by the CEO, signed by the chartered engineer, stamped and certified by the chartered engineer. You need to have a cover letter saying that what all documents that the file has. You need to have a proof of possession of roof or the building, right? It can be the ownership document, it can be a lease deed, but you need to be able to confirm that the roof is under your possession. Then you need the MOA or the AOA of the project owner company, a self-certified affidavit confirming that the certificates would be only used for the purpose that they are being taken, which is for that particular project. Earlier, this affidavit had to even get notarized, but nowadays a self-certified affidavit works. Then you also need to take the CA certificate for the project cost. The bill of materials combined and the POs that you submit are going to have a cost, right? So you need to ensure that the overall project cost is more than that cost, so that the idea is that you're not trying to inflate anything particularly just so that you are able to get better and more excise exemptions, right? So it is for that reason that a CA certificate is required to certify the project cost. In case there is a power evacuation being done, then a power evacuation approval is required. But typically for rooftop projects, power evacuation is not done. So therefore, you would require a chief electrical inspector approval. Now that chief electrical inspector approval is something that you need to take on the state level. Every state has got its own process. You need to submit a couple of drawings, a detailed project report, etc. to the chief electrical inspector. He would give that approval. In case you have got no interaction with the grid altogether, then a CEIG approval is not required. In which case, there's nothing going to be required separately submitted to the state nodal agency as well. The next thing is the single diagram of the plant. After that, the layout of the plant, and lastly, the detailed project report of the plant. So 3 copies of all of these documents are submitted to the state nodal agency. The state nodal agency internally takes some time to process this. After approval, after the state nodal agency has accepted your application, the nodal agency keeps one file for itself for its own records. One file is given back to the owner for their own records, and one file is submitted to MNRE with cover letter. Now the process over here is that the file is supposed to be sent from state nodal agency to MNRE directly. However, because these projects are extremely time sensitive, so what happens is that typically the state nodal agency hands it back to the owner, and the owner separately hands deliver the files to MNRE. That's oftentimes a much faster process than waiting for a speed post of these files to reach from the state nodal agency to the MNRE. So this entire process of state nodal agency approval will take anywhere from 3 to 10 days. The last process is that of the MNRE approval and exemption certificates. There are two subparts of this. There is part one, which is MNRE approval, and part two, which is exemption certificates. Now, in submitting these files to MNRE, MNRE checks and approves all the documents. The documents that are approved are all the same which are mentioned in the file. The MNRE is also known to ask some technical clarifications just to be sure that the project is not misusing these exemptions, particularly with respect to cables, transmission equipment, structure quantity, etc. So you might have to submit a cable schedule, or you might have to submit the diagram and BOQ of the structure separately as well to convince MNRE that there's nothing wrong. If you can make it a part of your original file itself, it's going to be even better. The earlier the process used to be that the director of MNRE was the only person who used to approve it. Nowadays, when after the approval of the director, there's another committee of 4 people which sits in addition to the approval of the director, which approves these projects in the back end. So this has made the process slightly longer, but this essentially protects the MNRE from issuing any certificates which are not meant for their true purpose. One way or the other, once your MNRE approval is obtained, and this would typically take about 3 days to probably 7 or even 10 days. But typically, you definitely get these in 2 weeks. Once that happens, after that, the exemption certificates are taken. The exemption certificates are basically the certificates. So let me put it this way: the MNRE, once it approves in the backend, the total bill of material becomes open for printing again. Till now, you were printing the entire list of quantities which you were getting certified by the CEO as well as a chartered engineer. But now you are able to print individual certificates for individual equipments as well. While you're printing these certificates, you need to be able to give certain more details along with the quantity of the equipment and which is the sub vendor, etc. You also need to be able to tell that the certificate is meant for which manufacturer, what is his excise range, what is his division, his commission rate, and his excise number. When you give all of these details, after that you are able to print the certificate as well. Now what you see on screen is a typical excise duty exemption certificate, right? So as you would see, there's some basic details which are mentioned for your particular project. Then after that, you can mention the PO number, the date of the PO, the EPC contractor to which the project firm has given the project, the sub vendor to which EPC contractor has placed the PO, the sub vendor which has got that from the sub vendor, etc. So you can go up to 3 or 4 levels down to find out who's the end manufacturer who actually needs these certificates. Then after that, you take the item number, the quantity, and the basic rate, and the applicable excise duty in percentage. All of these details are already partially filled by in the bill of material that you had originally made. The rest of these details can be taken from your vendor as well. Lastly, as you see on the second page, you also need to mention the excise number, excise range, division, and commissioner rate. Because once you get this excise certificate in a hard copy, the vendor who's actually manufacturing this will be taking it to his commissioner rate in order to be able to not be charged the excise duty, right? So this is the typical exemption certificate form that you print. You after you print this form, you take 2 copies of this form, you get it signed by the CEO and the chartered engineer again. You also attach the purchase orders of the relevant equipment for which these forms have been printed. You get those purchase orders also signed by the CEO uh, uh, as well as the chartered engineer. Lastly, the certificates are signed and stamped by the director at MNRE. Once the director at MNRE signs and stamps these certificates, he gives one certificate back to you, and the other certificate he keeps he takes a receiving on that and takes it back, right? So that's a proof that essentially you have received the certificate as well. So that's the entire process that goes about taking the MNRE approvals and excise exemption certificates. Now, all the excise exemption certificates or customs exemption certificates do not need to be necessarily taken all at once. You can print these certificates one by one, take it to the chartered engineer, take it to your CEO, attach purchase orders, submit it to MNRE, and within a couple of days they'll call you and tell you that the certificates are ready, so you can have it collected from the MNRE as well. This entire process, as I had mentioned earlier, is 7 to 30 days. The good news is that there's one advantage that comes along with using EZSOlar. So any equipment which is ordered using our solar cart, we give free excise exemption guidance for the equipment purchased, right? So probably some of you in the audience might already know that solar cart is an online marketplace for solar products. You can order modules, inverters, structures, cables, earthing, almost everything that goes into a solar plant using EZSOlar. You can even order equipment which are currently not listed on the solar cart, which are not listed online, or different makes that you want, or if it is not showing delivery at your particular location. All of that we manage offline to make sure that you are able to get as negotiated prices delivered at your doorstep across the country. In some cases, the prices that we have for bulk are significantly lesser than the prices that we have online. So feel free to give us a call anytime that you want, and we'll help you with the entire buying process. Typically, we have been known to give a 10 to 15% price advantage to our clients who have bought from us in the past. So here are our phone numbers. You can reach me or you can reach Mohit at any time that you want to order anything that you want, and possibly we should be able to get back with the negotiated quotation on the products within 48 hours of your inquiries. That's that, folks. Now I'll like to take up some questions. You could reach Mohit Agarwal at 9925345121. His email ID is mohitagarwal@ezysolare.com. mohitagarwal@ezysolare.com. My email ID is punitjaggi@ezysolare.com, and my phone number is 9980 Now let's see. People have given some questions. The first one, and there might be some clarifications to what I've said. One clarification is by Mr. Ketan Jasani, who is one of the certified chartered engineers of the MNRE to sign these documents. He says that there's a separate notification for mini and microgrid projects too. Great, that's some information that we didn't have, so you could also take for them. The next thing is that practically MNRE gives every exemption for less than 100 kilowatt 2 for any rooftop project, but there is no notification of MNRE for the same. So this is a little bit of a gray zone again. The next question is by Mr. Daniel. Is the minimum capacity of 100 kilowatt for a single customer or cumulatively for different customers? No, this is for a single customer, a single owner at any point of time, because the account that you make is attributable to a single owner only, right? So every time that you log into an account, that will be on behalf of a single owner. So that single owner cumulatively has to have 100 kilowatt, not 10 different owners combined. Mr. Pradeep Arya mentions customer exemptions are not available, but do imported modules have other benefits, example subsidy, etc. from MNRE? Uh, this is a slightly tricky question. We focused our attention only on exemptions this time around, but there are other benefits like accelerated depreciation and subsidy which are available to MNRE to rooftop solar projects as well. In fact, recently, a couple of weeks back, MNRE increased back the percentage of subsidy from 15% up to 30% again. There are certain exclusions in that as well. To the best of my knowledge, imported modules are not eligible to get these subsidies. You have to use domestic modules, MNRE certified, to be able to get these subsidies. The next question, Mr. Nihar Srivastav, all these exemptions activity have to be done before starting of the project. Well, you could do it at any point of time, but you need to understand that there is a lead time of all of these activities. So, in case you end up starting these activities late, you are going to be requiring the exemption certificates before at the time of dispatch of material from the factory premises in order to fulfill your timelines, but you might not get them in time, right? So typically, as soon as your bill of material is finalized and you start placing POs, you should immediately start this process as well, because this process is going to take 20 days to 45 days, and you should not be losing any benefit of exemptions on account of delays. Okay, it's a fairly large question by Mr. Sudeep Doshi. If I understand correctly, for a rooftop project, solar panels are already exempted from excise and customs, and inverters are imported with customs duty, whose exemption cannot be availed. So, exemption of excise duty can be availed only on cables and mounting structures. Is that correct? Yes, it is correct to an extent, but there are a lot of other equipments except for cables and mounting structures also which you can claim. For example, you can claim them on fasteners, you can claim it on conduits, you can claim it on weather monitoring stations, you can claim it on SCADA. So essentially, except for the list of ineligible items, which includes earthing, lighting, LA, etc., you should be able to claim it on all the other equipments as well. Next question again. Mr. Ketan Jasani has made a couple of suggestions for the audience. One is that please submit the drawings and layouts in A3 or A2 size instead of A4 size, and please ensure that there is no spelling mistakes. Otherwise, the authority is not going to give any approval. Please. The next question is by Mr. Arjun. Are these exemptions available for captive rooftop projects as well? Yes, absolutely. These are available for captive rooftop projects. Then what is the minimum size of projects for which we can avail these certificates? As I mentioned, 100 kilowatts either cumulatively or individually, but minimum 100 kilowatts. Can I avail these certificates from a project where we will be availing CFA from MNRE? Absolutely. These two processes are separate from each other. So you can go ahead and you can claim CFA is Central Financial Assistance, which is another way of calling subsidy. So you can claim subsidy and nevertheless claim these excise exemptions as well. But you need to mention that you are claiming subsidy. Ketan Jasani sir has provided another clarification. He says that as per the new procedure published on 2nd of December, the chief electrical inspector approval is not required on generated certificates, right? The question is by Mr. Shreya Shah. Do we need to upload the complete bill of certificates, a bill of material during online registration? Yes, absolutely. At a later stage, you won't be able to modify it, so you need to be able to upload it all at once. Also, please could you elaborate on how the BOM is to be divided in the solar block, power block, etc. It's actually pretty straightforward. So solar equipment would be all DC side would come under solar, all AC side could come under power, all transmission, which is all HT side and beyond, would come under evacuation, and measuring instruments would again be pretty straightforward. The weather stations and possibly the multimeters or other equipment that you're going to have. What about XED for upcoming modules to be manufactured by Trina JA Herion AP India? What is the case of imported cells or modules? So the exemptions come for the final equipment. So on cells, it's the lookout for the whether you have a customs exemption for imported cells or not is the lookout of the module manufacturer. What we are talking about is for the project execution company, which is the EPC contractor, or for the owner of the project. For them, we need to deal with the module suppliers only. So any modules which are manufactured in India would be subject to excise duty, and hence an excise exemption certificate is what would apply. This question was from Mr. Simon. Then we have Tapan sir asking a question that can user take subsidy and MNRE exemption at the same time? Yes, that is possible. What happens if the material purchased is purchased with exemption certificates and then the end customer cancels the project? Uh, Technically, you should be surrendering all the excise exemption certificates back to MNRE so that they are not being able to nobody is able to misuse it. As you said, CA certification for the project cost is required for submission. Company enrolled CA will be okay or not. Well, it has to be a practicing chartered accountant having its independent practice who can certify. So a company enrolled CA is mostly that of a senior accountant or a manager accountant who might not be able to do it. So you need to put it on the letterhead of a chartered accountant who is actually serving as a chartered accountant. So if you have somebody in-house, I'm not sure, but typically it's a third party. What if protections like lightning controls, etc., are a part of the inverter feature? Then in that case, you take an the inverter exemption only. There is no separate exemption, which is, I mean, you won't be, that won't be a reason why you won't get an exemption on the inverter. For rooftops, can you mention the items under each of the block? What I will do is that possibly I will be putting up a blog on the same topic sometime soon. I'll request you all to subscribe to the Easy Solar blog as well. Within that blog, I'll make a breakup of typically the equipments which are mentioned under solar block, under power block, and under the measuring instruments block. Please could you clarify on the customs duty exemption? Unfortunately, there's not a lot of clarity. So far, everybody has told us that customs duty exemption is not applicable for rooftop project. However, the form allows you to submit. We'll get that clarity in the next 15 days. We'll share the update with the audience as well. Don't we need to give a newness certificate also? I think in the affidavit itself, there's a line which says that the equipment is new and not repurchased or refurbished, etc. So it would be covered. In my experience in the past, we have not given any newness certificate. Newness certificates used to be given for projects, I think, prior to 2013 or so, right? But lately there are no newness certificates which are submitted. For getting MNRE exemption duty, is it compulsory that the EPC contractor should be an MNRE channel partner? No, it is not. These certificates are eligible to everybody. The MNRE channel partner condition is often on the subsidy, but the excise exemptions are independent of that. What is the role of the nodal agency? Is it necessary to take approval from the nodal agency even if the project doesn't belong to the nodal agency? Absolutely. The process that has been given by MNRE states that the nodal agency needs to be giving an approval first, after which the file goes to MNRE. So that's just the way it is. So I not getting into why this policy has been made this particular way. This is what is to be followed, irrespective. While stock and sale of inverters cannot get a customs exemption, high C sales can qualify for CTDC for customs duty exemptions, we hope. So this is by Sumit Datta. As I said, for rooftop project, there's not a lot of clarity on customs exemption. As far as the certification mentions, you cannot claim customs exemption, but practically you can submit a form as that field is available for you to get customs exemption as well. We'll get to answer that in the 15 days possibly. Pradeep Arya sir mentioned that the CEIG certificate is issued after installation is complete, so excise exemptions may only be claimed after installations. Actually, no. So there are two kinds of chief electrical inspections that you CEIG approvals that you get. One is on the drawings, and the other is on the execution. So you need to submit the CEIG, which is on the drawings, based on which the total bill of material has been made in the first place. You cannot claim excise exemptions once the equipment is already installed on site, because the equipment has already left the factory premises and the process of taking a refund, etc., is too long. So CIG certificates for drawing approvals would suffice over here. Because then the next thing is that what will be the procedure after receiving the certificate? After receiving the certificate, it's extremely straightforward. You go to submit the certificate to the vendor. The vendor submits it to his sub vendor, etc. And lastly, the person who has actually manufactured that equipment submits it to his relevant commissionerate, and he dispatches your material. In any case, whatever that the whole process of depositing the certificate to his own excise division, etc., that would be the vendor's headache. As soon as you submit the excise exemption certificate to him, he should be able to dispatch the products to you. May you please share this presentation for our future reference? All of EZSolar's past webinars and existing webinars are shared with the audience that attends these webinars. So you'll be getting a link possibly by Tuesday or Wednesday latest to a presentation download of this, as well as to the video of the entire webinar, right? Does EZSolar provide assistance only for exemption guidance? We do a lot more actually. We do the entire designing of the solar power plants for system integrators. and owners. We do capacity assessment, we do um, energy assessment, and finally we also offer the procurement services through solar cart. But yes, as far as guidance goes, we do not do it as a service as of now. We do it as an additional add-on to the procurement exercise that we do. So if any equipment is being bought through solar cart, for those equipments we would be able to give you guidance. If there's a little bit of running around which is required, we could possibly help you in that as well. Okay, there are still about 25 more questions to go, but we might not have all the time. Before we end the webinar, I just wanted to encourage you to please. Can you hear me? Yes, I think you can. So before finishing the webinar, there's just one small thing that I would request you to do. Uh, this is a YouTube channel of the webinar. This where you could follow all our past webinars as well. I request you to please have a look at those. Those are also of immense information. You could also friend us on Facebook or follow us on Twitter. We maintain a fairly active LinkedIn page as well. And lastly, we have got a blogs wherein you'll see a lot of data which might be relevant to a lot of you. uh, I request for the questions which have not already been answered, I request you to please share them over an email to me, and I'll be happy to answer all of those. We are as it is running out of time, thanks a lot for attending. I think it is one of the most well attended webinars that we have had. We are still at about 60 odd people. Thank you again, and stay tuned in for the next webinar, which might happen in the next 2 weeks. If there are any suggestions of any particular aspect that you would want to us to cover in our webinar or blog, please do write into us and we'll be happy to take that up as well. Thanks again. Thank you.